Boston lay silent under the cover of night, its wooden streets wrapped in drifting fog and faint moonlight. The city appeared peaceful, but beneath that calm, something powerful was about to unfold. Inside a dimly lit room, Paul Revere stood near the window, staring into the darkness. The flickering candlelight cast moving shadows across the walls, reflecting the tension in his mind. His eyes burned with determination. He knew this night would change everything. Fear was there, but stronger than fear was his purpose. Suddenly, a soft knock echoed through the quiet room. The sound cut through the silence like a warning. Samuel Adams stepped inside, his voice low and urgent. Both men exchanged a glance. They didn't need many words. They already knew what was at stake. Leaning over a wooden table covered in maps, they spoke in hushed tones. Every route, every village, every second mattered. The map of Boston lay between them, marked carefully. The flickering candlelight danced over the lines, like fate itself was guiding the path. Without hesitation, Paul grabbed his leather satchel filled with messages. These were not just letters. They were a call to action. He quickly put on his coat and hat, preparing himself not just for a ride, but for a mission that could change history. Before leaving, he and Samuel shared a firm handshake. No words were needed. It was a moment of trust and possible farewell. Paul stepped out into the cold night. Fog surrounded him, and his breath was visible in the freezing air. The world felt still, but danger was already moving. His horse stood waiting, its breath rising like smoke. Even the animal sensed the urgency. With swift motion, Paul mounted the horse. There was no time to waste. He rode through the narrow streets, lanterns glowing faintly on the sides. The sound of hooves echoed through the empty city. As Paul rode forward, his eyes caught the silhouette of a tall church tower rising into the dark sky, a silent watcher over the city. Suddenly, two lanterns flickered to life in the tower window. The signal was clear. The British were coming by sea. Paul's eyes widened. In that moment, everything became real. There was no turning back now. He urged his horse forward, galloping faster than before. The wind tore past him as his coat whipped behind him. Leaving Boston behind, he entered the open countryside. The road stretched ahead into darkness, lit only by faint moonlight. He arrived at the first quiet village. The houses stood still, unaware of the danger racing toward them. Paul shouted at the top of his voice, "The British are coming!" His voice echoed through the cold night air. Doors began to open. Villagers stepped out holding lanterns, confusion and fear on their faces. Close by, worried expressions spread from one face to another. Panic slowly replaced sleep. An old man stepped forward, gripping his lantern tightly. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. Paul nodded firmly, explaining the danger. His voice was urgent, his words sharp. There was no time for doubt. The village came alive. People gathered, whispering, questioning, preparing. Men rushed to grab muskets and tools, ready to defend their homes. Women and children stood close together, fear in their eyes but strength in their hearts. Without stopping, Paul rode away into the night once again, leaving behind a village now wide awake. The road ahead disappeared into a dark forest. Tall trees surrounded Paul, their shadows swallowing the faint moonlight. Branches creaked softly as the wind moved through them. The shadows on the ground shifted like something alive, making every moment feel uneasy. The sound of hooves hitting the dirt road echoed sharply in the silence, each step feeling louder than the last. Paul slowed slightly, his eyes scanning the darkness. Every instinct told him danger was near. In the distance, faint shapes appeared, riders moving through the trees. British soldiers. The redcoats advanced steadily, their presence cold and threatening. They were searching and getting closer. Without hesitation, Paul pulled the reins and turned sharply into a narrow, hidden path off the main road. He quickly dismounted and hid behind thick trees, holding his horse still, barely breathing. The soldiers approached with lanterns, their light cutting through the darkness as they searched the area. Time seemed to freeze. The forest fell into complete silence, broken only by the distant footsteps of danger. Sweat formed on Paul's face despite the cold. His heart pounded as he fought to stay perfectly still. The sound of boots and horses moved slowly past him, so close he could almost feel their presence. Lantern light flickered across the trees, briefly illuminating his hiding place, then fading again. Finally, the soldiers moved on, disappearing deeper into the forest and into the darkness. Paul let out a quiet breath of relief. He was safe. For now. Paul slowly stepped out from behind the trees, carefully listening to make sure the soldiers were truly gone. The danger had passed, but the mission was not over. Without wasting a second, he mounted his horse again and rode with even greater speed. Now, every moment mattered more than ever. The road stretched endlessly ahead, empty and silent. The night felt heavier, but his purpose burned brighter. Exhaustion showed on his face, but his eyes still held fierce determination. He refused to stop. At last, the first light of dawn began to appear. In the distance, the village of Lexington slowly came into view. Paul rushed forward and began knocking loudly on doors, his urgency breaking the quiet morning. Villagers woke in confusion and panic, rushing outside as fear spread quickly through the streets. Men gathered with weapons in hand, forming the local militia. The air was now filled with tension and readiness. A young soldier stood among them, his eyes filled with fear, but also courage. Paul spoke to them firmly, his voice strong and inspiring. "Stand your ground. Freedom is worth fighting for." The sun began to rise, casting golden light across the land. A new day had begun. Paul stood to the side, watching quietly. His mission was complete, but history was just beginning. The golden sunlight spread across the village, replacing the darkness of the night with hope. Silhouetted against the rising sun, Paul Revere became more than a rider. He became a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the spirit of freedom that would awaken a nation. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Drop a comment below and tell me which historical story you'd love to see next. Thank you so much for watching.